How's it going, guys, and welcome back to the channel. This video is pretty much another mashup of a bunch of inshore dives I've been on to lately, although I decided to structure it just a little differently. Because of the tide change we have in our area, it's pretty big and we only really get allowed an hour or so each dive. So rather than trying to run you through each day and having 8 or so different clips I've got to look through, I decided I'd just base it off of areas I was diving in and what sort of fish I was targeting, and hopefully that way it flows a bit smoother. So let me know what you reckon anyway. First spot I'm going to focus on is one that you may notice from a couple of my previous videos, and it's these big concrete artificials. I like to spend a bit of time at these as they promote a lot of diversity that some other spots just don't have. Being as tall as they are, they hold good amounts of bait, which in turn attracts good pelagic life, but also provides the cover underneath to house different demersal species. Although there isn't a lot of good reef fish in them, they seem to surprise me with a few different species of fish that I don't often pick up on other spots, so they tend to keep me coming back. Most days I've been here recently, I've only found mackerel, but they were what I was coming here for anyway. Although one morning, I found these 3 good-sized grassy sweetlip. These are one of those surprise fish I get here at times, and they're actually pretty common on most spots in the area, but most of the larger ones I've managed to get have been here, although I've only found them here a handful of times. After that dive, the grassies scattered out onto the sand and I never ended up taking a shot. But over the last couple of weeks, the grey mackerel have been increasing in numbers and I've managed to nail a couple of nice ones. Like most mackerel, greys are usually pretty approachable. As long as you have smooth, slow movements, they won't tend to spook and they are pretty inquisitive. However, I find them to be a bit softer than other mackerel, so it's important to take your time and focus on shot placement. Although this shot came out mostly because of the tangle on my clip, it showcases how much easier they'll tear off compared to say Spanish mackerel, but a well placed shot just above the pec fin or between the dorsal and anal fin will usually secure the fish. Another trick with these guys, especially on a reel gun, is I like to try and run my drag as loose as possible. So like, if you obviously don't want it to be coming off and tangling you up when you're trying to dive, but when you shoot these fish, if it is a poor shot, you really want them to just be able to take off and take line without putting too much pressure on them, and then play the fish lightly afterwards.
Got him that time.
The next area I spent a lot of time at is pretty much made up of a bunch of these nice rocky ledges. These provide good sort of broken rock and cave area that hold like plenty of bait and smaller fish, which in turn brings along a lot of your larger tropical sort of coastal species we have here in Queensland, like plenty of coral trout, mangrove jacks. We get heaps of golden trevally, cod, all the good stuff really. And over the last couple of weeks we've had some really productive diving here, so it's made for a great time. This particular little spot had a stack of life on it with big numbers of smaller fish and this huge school of golden trevally. We spent a bit of time here looking around, but we never found anything worth taking. However, we did have a pretty cool swim with this pair of huge Queensland grouper. Although this particular patch didn't have what we were chasing, a very similar patch just short distance away produced a couple of really nice fish for us over a couple of days. First dive of the first morning I was here, I was greeted by this nice mangrove jack. He was pretty friendly and he come in presenting an easy shot, but being the first dive, I figured I'd leave him and hold out to try and find something a bit more desirable. After a few dives of hanging out with that mangrove jack and looking around in all the little caves and things, I finally find what I was looking for, a nice big coral trout. A few days later, in the same area, we'd had a bit of a slower morning, but one of the lads just picked up a nice coral trout, but said he'd seen a much larger one in the distance, but couldn't get a shot at it. So I wasted no time, I took a dive, and I landed right on this really nice fish. This guy actually turned out to be a personal best for me, coming in at 76 centimeters, so pretty stoked with that one. The last spot I wanted to focus on is pretty much the same as the previous spot, although it's sort of just one really long ledge. Like most spots, the fish here will move around a lot, especially depending on the tides and where the bait's holding, but with a bit of searching you can generally find where they're hanging. First morning we came here, we had good enough fizz to follow the ledge from the surface. So we used this to our advantage and we covered a fair bit of the area to try and pinpoint exactly where the fish were hanging. We saw a few smaller black spot tusk fish and mackerel and things, but for a while we never came across much worth taking until we found an area that was holding more bait. Once we had found the bait, we started to see fish right away. There were more cod around, there was some small coral trout getting around, there was a large school of these golden trevally and a pretty good school of smallmouth nannies as well. I stuck around with these nannies for quite a while, and they were coming in pretty close, but not quite close enough to make the shot. And after a bit, I figured out that the best way was to come down current of the fish, drop behind them, throw up a bit of sand, and get them to turn around and come back to me. And after doing this a couple of times, I managed to close the gap on one and get a shot. After I lost that fish, they obviously became pretty flighty and I couldn't get them back in again. We decided we'd give it up for the day, but with the same tide on the morning the following day, we came back and luckily for us the fish had stuck around. And using the same tactic I was using the day before, I was able to get them in pretty quick for another shot. With another missed shot and the fish spooked once again, I decided to leave this spot alone for a while. And trying to put it to any reason other than fault of my own, I went and I changed out the shaft and the bands on my gun, and I came back a couple of weeks later. This time around they're a bit more touch and go. I had them come in like this once or twice, but they wouldn't slow down, and after missing those last few shots I just wasn't willing to take another long shot. I really wanted it to line up, but I never got that shot. But in the end we found a stack of these grey mackerel, so I took advantage of that and I took one of those home. We had been seeing a lot of greys this morning, but I never actually realised how many of them there were until I shot this one and all his mates were coming up off the bottom and following me around and stuff. I've had Spanish and plenty of other pelagics do this kind of behaviour, but this is the first time I've seen the greys come in when there's a bit of commotion like this. Well guys, that's a wrap for this video. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and let us know what you think, and make sure to follow along for the next one.